It's a cold, misty evening. The streets are deserted, blanketed in a silence so thick it feels like a warning. Suddenly, a faint noise cuts through the stillness, the shrill ring of a phone coming from inside an abandoned house. Just one ring. Then nothing. But that fleeting sound would become the critical thread that unraveled a chilling mystery. Welcome to True Crime Hub Star. In today's episode, we dive into a case where a single missed call from a buried phone revealed a horrifying secret, upended lives, and gave justice to a voice that had been violently silenced. Stay with us, because once you hear this story, you'll never ignore a ringing phone again. It started as a routine noise complaint on October 12, 2016. Officer Tanya Ellis was patrolling Maplewood Heights, a quiet middle-class suburb known for its trimmed lawns and friendly neighbors. But that night, a call from a worried resident stood out. She claimed to hear a phone ringing inside the long-abandoned house next door, several times in a row, each time at odd intervals. Tanya was skeptical. Empty homes often attract squatters or curious teens. But the caller's trembling voice and insistence something wasn't right prompted her to check it out. The house on 114, Beacon Street had a haunting stillness. The porch creaked under Tanya's boots. The lock on the door was broken. Inside, it was dust-covered and pitch black. And then, just as she stepped into the hallway, a phone rang. Muffled. Distant. She followed the sound to the basement. What she found was a duffel bag, large, heavy, and damp. A dark stain seeped through its corner. She unzipped it slowly, and froze. Inside was the body of a young woman. The woman had no identification. Her face was bruised, her wrists bore deep ligature marks, and her skin showed signs of blunt force trauma. Early forensic analysis estimated she'd been dead for at least 10 days. Amidst the horror, Tanya recovered the phone, still inside the bag, lodged between the woman's thigh and the side seam. The screen was cracked but functional. A soft vibration buzzed. One missed call. One name displayed. Babe Redheart. Investigators now had their first lead. Whoever Babe was had tried calling the victim just before she was discovered. Using emergency access, police pulled data from the phone. The number belonged to a Derek Callahan, 29, part-time bartender, no major criminal record. When questioned, Derek claimed the woman was his ex-girlfriend, Lila Monroe. He said she left him abruptly 3 weeks ago and that he hadn't heard from her since. But Derek's behavior raised red flags. He was overly calm, almost rehearsed. Detectives found it hard to believe he hadn't noticed Lila had vanished without a word, especially considering he'd called and texted her obsessively just days before. They secured a warrant for Derek's phone. What they found was a chilling digital trail, dozens of increasingly aggressive messages to Lila, GPS pings placing him near the abandoned home the night she vanished, and finally, silence. After October 2nd, he stopped contacting her completely. Lila, 24, had moved to Maplewood Heights to start over. Friends described her as a passionate artist, a painter who loved vibrant colors and had a laugh that lingered. But beneath her smile, she was battling something dark. Her relationship with Derek had been rocky. Friends recalled seeing bruises. She stopped going out. Became secretive. Texts retrieved from her phone hinted at attempts to leave him. Phrases like, "I can't take this anymore," and "he watches me all the time" revealed a pattern of emotional control and fear. She had confided in her sister, Amy, who encouraged her to leave. Amy even helped her start looking for a new apartment. Lila's last message to her? Almost free. She was never heard from again. The crime scene unit extracted all possible data from both phones. Lila's device revealed deleted voicemails from Derek, including one just hours before her death. "If I can't have you, no one will." The most damning clue came from a GPS app that Lila had installed unknowingly. Derek had secretly shared her location with his device. He had been tracking her movements for months. Surveillance footage confirmed that Derek's car had passed Beacon Street the night of October 2nd. Later footage showed him carrying a large bag, the same make and model as the one Lila's body was found in, down a side alley. When detectives confronted Derek with the evidence, he broke his calm facade. First, he claimed the messages were old. Then he suggested Lila was unstable and had threatened to harm herself. But the autopsy revealed no self-inflicted wounds, only blunt force trauma and defensive injuries. The turning point came when Derek's younger brother, Jason, walked into the precinct. With tears in his eyes, he confessed that Derek had shown up at his place the night of October 2nd. He had blood on his jeans and asked Jason to store a bag in his garage. Jason refused, but he never told anyone. Until now. Derek Callahan was charged with second-degree murder and unlawful disposal of human remains. The courtroom was packed when his trial began in June 2017. The prosecution built a compelling case: digital surveillance, GPS data, eyewitness testimony, and damning voicemails. The jury heard Lila's voice crack with fear in one message: "Please stop. You're scaring me." Derek's defense tried to paint the relationship as mutually toxic. But the sheer volume of evidence, the stalking, the abuse, the threats, made it clear who the predator was. In a powerful moment during the trial, the prosecution played one of Lila's voicemails in court. Her voice, soft and scared, echoed through the room. "If I disappear, it's him." Gasps filled the courtroom. Lila had predicted her own death. Her message was chilling, raw, and real. It obliterated any doubts. Witnesses from Lila's life, her sister, friends, co-workers, painted a picture of a vibrant soul slowly dimmed by abuse. Each testimony strengthened the case against Derek. After 5 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. Derek Callahan was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 32 years without parole. The judge called the murder a cruel act of control and cowardice, and praised the investigation team for turning a random phone ring into a beacon for justice. Lila's family wept. Her sister held up the phone that had been recovered from the crime scene and whispered. She called out. "And we finally heard her." Lila Monroe's story has become a symbol for the overlooked signs of domestic abuse. Her family started a foundation in her name to support victims of stalking and intimate partner violence. Every October, Maplewood Heights holds a candlelight vigil, and every year, they let a phone ring out into the night, once in remembrance. Because sometimes, the quietest sound, a single ring, can expose the loudest truth. After Derek Callahan's conviction, investigators and psychologists began to piece together the psychological profile of a man whose obsession turned fatal. According to Dr. Melissa Crane, a forensic psychologist brought in post-trial, Derek exhibited traits of narcissistic and borderline personality disorders, a volatile combination when left unchecked. He was controlling, deeply insecure, and manipulative. People close to him described how he could be incredibly charming one minute and explosively angry the next. For Derek, Lila wasn't a partner, she was possession. The idea of losing her shattered the false reality he had built around their relationship. In recorded jailhouse conversations, Derek never referred to Lila by name. He used terms like "my girl" or "the one who lied." Even after conviction, he refused to accept responsibility, often portraying himself as the real victim. But his digital footprint told another story: hundreds of deleted messages, browser searches on how to track someone without them knowing, and chilling notes saved on his phone about punishing betrayal. He had planned this. And when Lila pushed back, his plan turned into execution. The phone that cracked the case, the one that rang inside the duffel bag, was a forensic goldmine. It had survived nearly 2 weeks of moisture, exposure, and physical trauma. The crime lab team used advanced data recovery tools to extract metadata, timestamps, and even reconstructed deleted files. What they found painted the last days of Lila's life in harrowing detail. She had used the phone to record a short voice memo titled Proof. In it, she whispered from what sounded like a locked room, "He's coming back. He took my keys. I don't know if I'll get out." It ended abruptly, with a loud bang and static. They also found a GPS history of her final movements, and a text draft never sent. "To whoever finds this, I didn't run away. Please don't let him lie." The forensic team also matched partial fingerprints from the bag and phone to Derek, further sealing the case. But it was that memo, her voice, trembling yet defiant, that broke hearts in court. In the aftermath of the trial, more people came forward. Co-workers from Lila's art studio shared how she had confided in them about Derek's possessiveness. One recalled a disturbing incident where he showed up during an exhibit, stood silently in the back, then left without saying a word, only to call her 27 times that night. Neighbors admitted they'd heard screaming from her apartment, but assumed it was just a couple fighting. "We didn't want to pry," one said in tears. "Now I wish we had." Perhaps the most gut-wrenching account came from a teen named Clara, who had once dated Derek briefly. She described similar control tactics: the love bombing, the gaslighting, the isolation. Though their relationship ended before it turned violent, her story echoed Lila's experience eerily. It became clear that Derek's behavior followed a pattern, one that had escalated dangerously with Lila. Amy Monroe, Lila's older sister, became the face of the fight for justice. In media interviews and public appearances, She remained composed but fierce. Lila was more than a victim, she said. She was light. And he tried to snuff her out. But she shines through every person who says her name. Amy didn't stop at raising awareness. She worked with local lawmakers to push for Lila's Law, legislation aimed at expanding protections for victims of stalking and coercive control. Her tireless advocacy led to the passage of new emergency restraining order protocols in their county, allowing victims to file faster and receive real-time monitoring support. Amy's transformation, from grieving sister to fearless advocate, inspired hundreds. Her foundation, Lila Lives, quickly gained national attention and has since helped over 200 victims escape dangerous partners. Maplewood Heights was never the same after Lila's death. Once a quiet, content community, it was now a town shaken awake. Vigils were held. Murals painted. For the first time, domestic violence wasn't just a whispered topic, it was a shared wound. Community meetings started focusing on recognizing red flags. Schools introduced programs on healthy relationships. The local police department established a domestic violence response unit. On the anniversary of her death, a sculpture was unveiled in the town square, an abstract figure with one hand raised, the other holding a phone, its base inscribed, "She called." We heard. For many residents, it wasn't just about mourning Lila. It was about changing because of her. Cyber forensics became central to understanding the full timeline of events. Lila's and Derek's phones, laptops, and cloud backups were scanned for deeper patterns. Derek had installed spyware on Lila's phone, a hidden app disguised as a calendar widget that tracked her calls, texts, location, and even recordings. Experts found screen captures of her conversations with her sister and a list of names under a file titled Enemies. He had mapped out who he believed was turning Lila against him: friends, co-workers, her therapist. The list ended with one word: me. These findings became part of a digital abuse awareness campaign led by Lila Lives. It aimed to educate people about tech-enabled stalking, and how the very devices we use to stay connected can be weaponized. After the documentary about Lila aired, dozens of survivors reached out to Amy and her foundation. They saw themselves in Lila's story, the manipulation, the fear, the isolation. One woman, a teacher named Hannah, shared how she left her abuser after seeing the episode. Another, a teen named Reese, confided that he'd been scared to speak up because his abuser was a girl. Lila's story made me feel seen, he said. Lila Lives began hosting survivor circles, both in person and online. These safe spaces became a lifeline for many, a place where silence was no longer an option. But the story also exposed flaws in the justice system. Lila had reported Derek once, but no action was taken. Officers cited lack of evidence, and no follow-up occurred. Amy obtained records showing that over 70 similar reports in the county had been dismissed the same way. It was a devastating revelation. Pressure from the community and Lila's foundation led to a formal review of domestic violence protocol. Several officers were retrained, and an oversight board was established. Change was slow, but it was happening. In late 2019, Amy received a letter. It was from Derek. He denied writing it initially, but handwriting analysis confirmed it was his. In it, he rambled about regret, fate, and how she made him do it. Amy read it once, then burned it. "I didn't need closure," she said later. He wanted attention. But this isn't his story anymore. The letter, however, was kept in police files, a chilling look into the mind of a man who saw control as love. The phone that rang inside the basement didn't just crack the case. It gave Lila a voice. It was her final scream, silent but echoing loud enough to reach the world. Every time someone hears her story, that ring echoes again. And with every echo, someone else may find the courage to speak. Memory twisted by madness. Ringing phone led to the corpse. The break in the wall. As investigators probed Derek's digital life, a chilling discovery emerged: encrypted folders containing videos. Not the kind stored innocently, but meticulous recordings of Lila's final weeks. Each clip was catalogued, date-stamped, and deeply disturbing. The clips weren't of violence, but of control. Conversations in which Derek would subtly gaslight Lila, dictate her friendships, her outfits, even the inflection in her voice. To the untrained eye, it was just a relationship. But to trauma psychologists, it was a masterclass in coercive control. And finally, a video dated the night Lila disappeared. Derek pacing, visibly anxious, mumbling to himself, "She saw it, she saw it." The burner phone. When investigators traced a second phone registered under a fake name, they cracked open another corridor of secrets. This burner had received exactly one call on the night of Lila's disappearance, at 2:14 a.m. The signal bounced off a tower less than 2 blocks from the construction site where Lila's body was found. And the voicemail Derek left on that line? Clean it up. All of it. Prosecutors would argue this was a call to an accomplice. But the number was never used again. Who was on the other end? A shadow the investigation never caught. The confession that wasn't. Under pressure, Derek finally asked to speak with his lawyer. Days later, his defense team arranged a closed-door plea hearing. But at the last minute, Derek changed his mind. "I want the world to hear me," he said. What followed in court shocked everyone. Derek took the stand in his own defense and delivered a rambling, delusional monologue about betrayal, love, and conspiracy. He insisted Lila was part of a government surveillance operation targeting him. The courtroom was silent, until Lila's mother stood up and walked out, unable to hear her daughter's memory twisted by madness. The trial's turning point. It was a slip-up from the defense that changed everything. During cross-examination, they accidentally introduced Derek's psychiatric evaluation, one they had kept sealed. It revealed a diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder with violent ideation. The prosecution pounced. Suddenly, the jury had medical proof that Derek was dangerous and unstable. The tide shifted. The victim impact statements. Courtroom testimony can be powerful. But nothing lands harder than a mother's grief spoken out loud. Lila's mom described the horror of hearing her daughter's ringtone while holding her cold phone. Her father said, "I didn't bury a daughter, I buried half my soul." The courtroom wept. Even the bailiff turned his face. Verdict and aftermath. After 14 hours of deliberation, the jury returned, guilty. On all counts. The judge sentenced Derek to life without parole. No deals. No leniency. As he was led away, Derek laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You'll never understand why," he muttered. It was the last thing he ever said in public. Lila's legacy. Her family turned their grief into fuel. The Lila James Foundation launched with the goal to teach young adults about coercive control, digital stalking, and the red flags of abuse. They held workshops, school programs, and lobbied for new legislation. Lila's Law, making digital tracking without consent a felony. The podcast that reopened wounds. A year later, a popular true crime podcast released an episode suggesting Derek may have had help, citing the burner phone and strange DNA fragments found at the scene that didn't match him. The podcast exploded. Theories surfaced. Was someone else watching Lila? Was Derek a puppet, not the mastermind? The call that still rings. Even now, Lila's phone is preserved in evidence. The ringtone, the same one that cracked the case, still plays during presentations her mother gives to schools. "This is the sound of a girl trying to be found," she says. It's become symbolic. A reminder that one sound, one instinct, can turn the tide in a case. Echoes in the silence. Years have passed. Derek remains silent. No parole. No new confessions. But on every anniversary, Lila's friends gather at the site. A garden now stands where the concrete once covered her. They bring phones. They play the ringtone. And for a moment, the silence of loss is filled with a sound that reminds the world. Justice sometimes begins with just one ring. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to True Crime Hub. Share Lila's story so more people understand how psychological abuse can turn deadly. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Derek acted alone? And hit that bell so you never miss a story that demands to be told. Bell subscribe. Share. Remember,